Welcome back to the Morning Kickoff Show. I'm your host, Matt Witt, and today we are back with more Minnesota Vikings football content. This is a football show, and we like to talk football, but I like my Minnesota Vikings, as you can tell when you look around the room. I do like my Minnesota Vikings, and it seems that these these episodes where we talk about the Vikings have been doing well. But it's been pretty quiet around the football world, but we're here to still make content. We're here to talk about Minnesota Vikings breakout candidates for the 2022 season. This is one of my favorite episodes that I do every year, is talking about potential breakout stars for the Vikings going into the 2022 season. And a quick reminder of how we do this: we don't include rookies on this list, and we don't include previous breakout stars on this list as well. So we're not going to put KJ Osborne on this list because he was our breakout player last year, and I believe our previous two after that aren't even with the team anymore. So we can't put KJ Osborne or rookies on this list. With that being said, let's start with our top 10. 10th on this list, we have Wyatt Davis. Our second round player out of The Ohio State University was drafted by the Vikings in the third round. The reason why Wyatt Davis is so low on this list, even though I believe he has superstar potential: first of all, we have not seen it yet. Second of all, he will likely not get a lot of play time in 2022. Let's be completely honest, Wyatt Davis, if he's going to be rotated into the starting role, that's probably not going to be a good thing, considering if we see a lot of Wyatt Davis in 2022, that means our offensive line is not looking very good. So for that reason, I have him 10th on this list, because the only way we would see a lot of Wyatt Davis, even though he has superstar potential, is because I would expect to see Jesse Davis start. If he looks bad, maybe we see a rookie Ed Ingram step in, or Chris Reed, who we just brought in. If Garrett Bradbury looks bad as well, we would likely see Ed Ingram or Schlottman step into there as well. So I wouldn't expect to see a whole lot of Wyatt Davis, and that's why I have him 10th on this list. I believe he has superstar potential, but I don't believe we'll get to see it in 2022 quite yet. Another player also on top of that is Armon Watts. Exact same reason. Armon Watts, going into year 4 now, 6th round draft pick out of Arkansas, has been a massive hit. Looking for a player in the 6th round. He has been a great nose tackle stepping in the last couple of years. He stepped in for Michael Pierce phenomenally this last season. I believe he forced 2 fumbles and had a couple sacks on top of that. For a 300-pound man to be getting sacks and fumbles, forced fumbles, that's incredible, especially when you're a 6th round draft pick. Armon Watts, another player I believe has superstar potential, which is why I put him on this list, but he's so low because I don't believe we will get to see Armon Watts unless if Dalvin Tomlinson suffers with a injury that puts him out for the season. That's the only case where I would have Armon Watts being a breakout star. I believe he'll be a great rotational guy, and maybe after the season we do bring him back, because both Dalvin Tomlinson and Armon Watts are on their final year of their deal, meaning they're going to be unrestricted free agents in 2022. Kwesi will have a decision on what guy to bring back, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe James Lynch is our starter in 2023. For all we know, anything can happen, especially looking at these defensive linemen where we have a lot of depth. And you're going to see quite a few defensive linemen on this list, because there is a lot of bench players who can really rotate into the starting role by the end of the 2022 season. And that leads me on to my next guy, Kenny Willekes. I have talked about Willekes a lot. Talk about another player. Look at how the Vikings have drafted in the late rounds. Say what you want about Rick Spielman. You can call him terrible at drafting the first round. You can say what you want about Rick Spielman. The guy was a mastermind when it came to draft day. He was. When it came to day 3 of the draft, the guy was able to get steals. We just talked about Armon Watts being drafted in the 6th round. That was a draft pick by Spielman. And now Kenny Willekes, who was drafted in the 7th round of the 2020 draft class from Michigan State. What a great 2020 draft class. This is not the only 2020 draft pick that we're going to be talking about in this episode. But Kenny Willekes has worked his way up from the practice squad onto the active roster, and now a potential starter. Can you believe that? In just 3 seasons, Kenny Willekes, going into year 3, is already a potential starter when he was a 7th round draft pick and started in the practice squad. Great job for him. Hats off to this Vikings organization for being able to develop defensive linemen, and I'm really excited to watch what Willekes can do in this next season. He's done a great job as a rotational guy this last season, and I love what I've seen from him thus far. With that being said, he has a lot of competition when it comes to that 3rd defensive lineman role, and we're going to talk about some other defensive linemen that he'll be competing with here, but I'm really excited for Kenny Willekes to see what he can do in year 3. And he's one of the players I'm going to be watching the preseason. We're going to talk more on him later, but this is a show where we love Kenny Willekes and what we've seen from him thus far. And 7th on this list, we have Chandon Sullivan. Yeah, Chandon Sullivan, the only player on this list who we did not draft. This is a player who Ed Donatel had his eyes on. He worked with in the past in Green Bay, and now that he was a free agent, an unrestricted free agent, brought in to be our potential starting nickelback. And I have him 7th on this list because I believe that he will get a lot of play time. Looking at how Ed Donatel has run a defense in the past, we see a lot of 3 corners on the field at one, 2 outside corners, and a nickelback, which makes a lot of sense as teams are passing more than they've ever done in the past. For that reason, I believe that we won't actually see a lot of Jordan Hicks. I believe Chin Sullivan will play more snaps than Jordan Hicks, depending on the opposing offenses that we play and how Sullivan looks as a nickelback. But I have him on this list because I believe that as a nickel has a potential superstar potential, and I have him on this list as one of the players who can be a pleasant surprise on the Vikings defense. Don't believe he'll be in the Pro Bowl or anything. I don't think he's going to be a potential first, second team All-Pro, but I believe he'll be a surprise in the Vikings defense, so I have him 7th on this list. He should be able to see some significant playtime. Number 6 on this list, and this might surprise some people, but Jalen Twymon, second-year player, drafted in the 6th round out of pick. Another player to talk about, another late-round draft pick from Rick Spielman. Now, the reason why I have Twymon 2nd on this list, or 6th on this list, even though we haven't got to see him so far, he missed his entire rookie season after being a victim of a shooting. We haven't got to see him yet. I've just read a lot of reports from Vikings insiders on Twymon being our starter. Yeah, that's a second-year player we drafted in the 6th round out of Pitt. This is a player who was a potential first-round draft pick the year before, but after falling due to injuries and then obviously what happened with him, we finally get to see what Twymon can do. And a lot of reports I've read, he's going to be a starter. And even ESPN on their depth chart has Twymon as the 3rd starting defensive lineman for the Vikings, which is incredible. And that's why I have him on this list, because if he is a starter, yeah, he can be a superstar, especially looking at his tape in Pitt. I'm really excited to see what he can do. He's going to have to win that role. He's going to have to play against it with Kenny Willekes and Armon Watts, who we just talked about. But you also have Patrick Jones on the list. You have Janarius Robinson out there. There's a lot of players out there that Twymon's going to have to compete with to get that 3rd defensive lineman role. But super excited to see what he can do. I'm really surprised what I've seen from a lot of reports around Vikings insiders. Number 5th on this list, we have Kene Nwangwu. Some people will say that his rookie season was kind of a breakout year, as Nwangwu is already the best kick returner we have had since Cordero Patterson, and I don't believe there's any debating that, any question about that. The reason why I have him on this list is, first of all, he wasn't our breakout player last year. That was KJ Osborne. Looking at him going into year 2, our 4th round pick out of Iowa State, our 4th round pick out of Iowa State, speedster as a back, and is also an excellent kick returner. I believe, looking at it right now, if Kene keeps up how he's been returning kicks in the 2021 season into 2022, he can make a Pro Bowl. Yeah. He's already one of the best kick returners in the entire league, and that's why I have him this high on this list, even though, despite him being a running back, could still make a Pro Bowler as a special team returner. Now, as a running back, looking at the running back position right now, we have to expect that Dalvin Cook's going to go down with the injury. We have to expect that this is going to be Alexander Madison's last year, meaning we could see him be traded away before the trade deadline. Or even if that doesn't happen, Alexander Madison is also another injury-prone running back, meaning we could get to see a lot of Kene Nwangwu. And I'm really excited to see how KOC does use Kene, because he's a speedster back. There's a lot of routes that he can run for our offense as well. A lot of options KOC has, so I'm really excited to see what he can do for our team as a back. So with that being said, Kene Nwangwu, 5th on this list, very safe spot to put him. We have Cameron Dantzler. Dantzler was 2nd on this list last year, and now I have him 4th on this list because obviously we brought in more corners. We just brought in Andrew Booth Jr. and a Caleb Evans, so it's not as he shouldn't be able to see as much play time as he did this last season. With that being said, he still does have star potential, and we have to see what he can do going into year 3. I'm really excited to see what Dantzler can do. Maybe he can earn himself a contract extension after this year. Maybe after the season, we see Andrew Booth Jr. and Cameron Dantzler being a starting 2 corners. It's very possible, and I would like to see what can happen. The reason why I have him still so high in this list is because we have seen injuries with our starting corners in the past. Looking at Patrick Peterson, he did miss some games this last year, and Jabuth Jr. has missed a lot of games when he was with Clemson. For that reason, I believe that we will get to see Dantzler play some significant play time. Didn't have a great year 2 this last season. Now some can argue that was Mike Zimmer, how he utilized him. With that being said, I'm excited to see what Dantzler can do in year 3, and I believe he has potential to be our breakout player this next year because we have seen injuries happen and should be able to see significant play time for a year 3 corner. Going into the number 3 spot, this was easy. This top 3 is great, and any of these players in the top 3, I believe, are going to be a superstar this next season. Number 3 is going to be Ezra Cleveland. Ezra Cleveland has been secretly one of the best draft picks for the Vikings over the last 5 years. To find a player in the late second round who has stepped up and been a stud as a guard for us and played all games, Ezra Cleveland, if I pull up the stats real quick, he started all 17 games for us last year at left guard and got a 68.9 PFF grade. For a year 2 offensive lineman, a 68.9 PFF grade is not bad at all. And now going into year 3, a player we drafted from Boise State in the second round, looks like he's going to be a lock and look like he's going to be our starter for some time to come. We have to see more of, obviously, we have to see more of Ezra Cleveland to consider him a hit of a draft pick, to consider him a great draft pick, but it's looking good so far. That 2020 draft class has been amazing for us. Can you believe it? If it wasn't for the Jeff Gladney pick, take that pick out of it, it looks like one of the best draft classes we've had over the last decade. Maybe second best behind the 2015 draft class. Nothing compares to the 2015 draft class for the Vikings. That wasn't only the Vikings' best draft class of all time. That was maybe one top 5 all-time draft class when you're looking at how these players have gone. Now, obviously, with our first pick, Trey Waynes kind of sets it back a little bit, but still, Ezra Cleveland with the third on this list. Looks like he has superstar potential so far, and I'm excited to see what he can do in year 3 at left guard. Ezra Cleveland, left guard, starting next year. Going to be really excited to see what he can do. Like, there's a lot of red flags and question marks when looking at our offensive line, but that really is only at left tackle, center, and right guard. I'm excited. I'm so happy that we have Brian O'Neill and Ezra Cleveland, who should be here for a long time to come. Still young guys who are going to continue to be stars. We have to see more from Cleveland. Obviously, we have to hopefully that this can be a breakout year. And like I said, this top 3, all these players look like they're going to break out this season. Number 2, we have Christian Darrisaw. Going into year 2, our first round draft pick out of the 2021 draft class, I believe we took him 22nd overall, 23rd overall, somewhere around there, from Virginia Tech. Only started 10 games in his rookie season. That was due to injuries and inexperience. Now going into year 2 is a lot more experienced, and if he can stay healthy, should start all 17 games for us at left tackle. I am really excited to see what this player can do. We didn't get to see a whole lot, even though he started 10 games this last year. We didn't get to really see what he's capable of. And now hopefully going into year 2, we can really see what he can do as a left tackle. It is such an important position. Arguably, the second most important position in all of football is the left tackle position. And I'm just hoping to God that Christian Darrisaw can work in the league. He was a first round draft pick and it felt like a great draft pick. We just have to see what he can do. Now, has done a great job. Don't get me wrong. He's done a great job in his rookie season. We just didn't get to see a whole lot his rookie season. So now going into year 2, I'm really excited to see what he can do. And I'm just so happy we're not starting this year with Rashad Hill at left tackle. That was a disgrace. And now first in this list for the second straight year. It's easy. It's obvious. Everybody's got to have him first in this list or second on this list or third. The top 3 is really close. And that's going to be Irv Smith Jr., our tight end out of Alabama, now going into year 4, aka contract year. For a player going into year 4, he's only 24 years old. This guy came into the league at 20. That's very uncommon to see that players that young in the NFL. I guess that's very common in the NBA, but in the NFL, it's not very common. Our second round draft pick in the 2019 draft class, one of the weaker draft classes for the Vikings, but still, hopefully, Irv Smith Jr. can work. And going into year 4, now contract year, should see significant playtime, especially without Kyle Rudolph and Tyler Conklin. We should see a lot of Irv Smith Jr., and I wouldn't be surprised if he's the second most targeted player on this Vikings offense next year. Yes, second most targeted player. You have Adam Thielen. You can use him as a decoy a lot. You have Justin Jefferson. Obviously, Jefferson's got to be the most targeted player. Outside of that, Irv Smith Jr. has a massive wingspan. This is a big body guy. He is a wide receiver in a tight end body is who Irv Smith Jr. is. We just have seen it yet. And I had him first in this list last year, and it sucked to see that he tore his meniscus right before the season started, and we didn't get to see him. Tyler Conklin did a great job stepping into the role. With that being said, I'm waiting to see what Irv Smith Jr. can do. I'm so excited to see this. And I'm really excited not only to see what Irv Smith Jr. can do in this offense, but to see what everybody can do on this offense in the 2022 season, because this is an entire new coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball. I'm assuming that we make Justin Jefferson the focal point of this team. I'm assuming we don't revolve our offense around the run game anymore, and we revolve our offense around the pass, starting with Justin Jefferson getting over 10 targets a game. And who should be the second most targeted player? In my opinion, you can have Irv Smith Jr. be the second most targeted player. Oh yeah, you have Adam Thielen, you have KJ Osborne. You can use Dalvin Cook as a wide receiver. I mean, there are so many options that this Vikings offense has. We're on paper right now, we should be a top 5 offense, no question, a top 5 offense. We have our playmakers. We are stacked at the playmaker positions. It just comes down really to the offensive line. I have my doubts about Jesse Davis right now. Now we'll have to see how this can go, and I obviously have my doubts about Garrett Bradbury. Outside of that, we are a complete offense, and we have to see what Christian Darrisaw can do. So that's why looking at the top 3, it really comes down to these players: Ezra Cleveland, Christian Darrisaw, Irv Smith Jr. 3 players on offense who have superstar potential, and we have to see it in 2022. If all 3 of these players look like they have a breakout season, there is no question the Vikings have an all-pro offense. It has to happen. It has to happen in 2022. And I'm just waiting to see what this offense can do. I'm hoping that we can finally just live up to our expectations on offense. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for the Vikings to be the best offense in the league. I'm just asking that you live up to our expectations, because on paper, we are stacked. Make Justin Jefferson the focal point of your team. Stop revolving around the run game. And let's hope this offensive line can look good. Looking at you, Christian Darrisaw and Ezra Cleveland on the left side of the line, I'm just hoping someone can step up at right guard. If it's not Jesse Davis, I'm hoping this Ed Ingram guy can step up at left guard or right guard or the center positions. And then looking at the defense, obviously, there's a lot of questions on this defense right now. Looking specifically at that third defensive lineman, we talked about Armon Watts, Kenny Willis, Jalen Twymon. We talked about multiple players who can step up on defense. So that's going to wrap up my top 10 breakout players, potential breakout players for the Minnesota Vikings in the 2022 season. And my prediction is that Irv Smith Jr. is a breakout star for the Vikings in 2022. Thank you.